Captain Jake Morrison stood in the main room of the human ship Aurora's Dawn. His hands were behind his back as he looked out at the huge space station floating in front of them. The station was bigger than any city on Earth. It belonged to the Galactic Council, where all the different alien races met to talk about important things. Jake had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in the colony wars and helped make first contact with alien species. But today felt different. Today felt like the most important day of his life. Admiral Lisa Grant walked up beside him. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. Everyone in the Earth military knew her name. She was the best negotiator humanity had, and she never backed down from a fight. "Are you ready for this, Jake?" she asked quietly. Jake nodded. "As ready as anyone can be for what we're about to do." They walked together toward the communication room. The walls of the ship hummed with power as they prepared to send their message across space to the Galactic Council. Jake could feel his heart beating faster. What they were about to say would change everything. The communication room was full of screens and blinking lights. Commander Lisa Hayes was already there checking the equipment. She was Grant's best aide and had been with her for 10 years. Lisa Hayes was young but smart, and she understood aliens better than most humans. "All systems are working," Hayes reported. "The council is waiting for us." Grant took a deep breath and stepped in front of the main screen. The image changed to show the inside of the council chambers. It was a massive room with hundreds of different alien species sitting in circles around a central platform. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of what looked like living crystal. There were aliens that floated like gas clouds and others that looked like walking trees. In the center of the room sat the most important aliens. The Zephyrian Empire had the biggest section. They looked like huge lizards that walked on two legs. Their leader, Ambassador Sectar Voss, was sitting on a throne made of black metal. His yellow eyes looked at the humans with disgust. Grant stepped forward and began to speak. Her voice was calm but strong. "Members of the Galactic Council," she said, "I am Admiral Lisa Grant speaking for the United Earth Federation. We have asked for this meeting because of a serious problem that must be solved." The alien translator machines hummed as they changed her words into hundreds of different languages. Some aliens made clicking sounds. Others flashed different colors. The gas cloud aliens pulsed with light. "For 3 years," Grant continued, "the Zephyrian Empire has been attacking human colonies on the edge of our space. They have taken our people as slaves. They have destroyed our homes. They have killed our families." Ambassador Voss stood up from his throne. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "The humans are a young species," he said. "They have only been in space for 200 years. We have ruled among the stars for thousands of years. These humans live on worlds that we have claimed. They must learn their place." Other council members began to speak. The crystal aliens called Altarians suggested trade agreements. The gas cloud aliens, known as Nebulons, wanted to form committees to study the problem. The insect-like hive speakers buzzed about slow integration over many years. Grant listened to them all. Jake could see her jaw getting tighter with each suggestion. He knew that look. He had seen it before when impossible situations required desperate solutions. Finally, Grant raised her hand for silence. The huge chamber became quiet. "We have tried talking," she said. "We have tried trade offers. We have tried peaceful solutions. The Zephyrians have ignored all of them. They continue to take our people. They continue to destroy our worlds." She paused and looked directly at Ambassador Voss. "So now we give you one final warning. The United Earth Federation demands that the Zephyrian Empire release all human prisoners immediately, return all stolen property, leave human space forever." The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens clicked, buzzed, flashed, and made sounds that had no human words. Ambassador Voss laughed, a terrible sound like metal being torn apart. "And what will you do if we refuse?" he asked. "Your entire species has fewer ships than one of our fleets. You are children playing with toys." Grant's voice became very quiet, but somehow everyone in the huge chamber could hear her clearly. "If you do not release our people, we are coming for you. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a promise." The laughter died in Voss's throat. Something in Grant's voice made even the ancient aliens pay attention. "You have been warned," Grant said simply. An old alien in the back of the chamber spoke up. It was one of the Void Walkers, a species so old that they remembered when the galaxy was young. Its voice echoed in everyone's mind without using sound. "Young humans," the Void Walker said. "Your passion is admirable, but passion cannot defeat superior numbers and better technology. Perhaps you should consider compromise." Before Grant could answer, Commander Hayes stepped forward. "Respectfully, honored Void Walker," Hayes said, "you have never seen what humans do when their family is in danger. You are about to learn." Ambassador Voss stood tall on his throne. His yellow eyes glowed with amusement. "Your warning is noted," he said, "and dismissed. We will continue to do what we have always done. If you wish to throw your ships away in a hopeless fight, that is your choice." Other alien leaders nodded in agreement. They had all seen species make threats before. Young races often tried to sound tough when they were really weak. The humans would calm down after a few months. They would accept reality and learn to live with the situation. Grant looked around the chamber one more time. She saw aliens who thought humans were children. She saw creatures who believed strength only came from having more ships and bigger weapons. She saw a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to fight for something more important than territory or trade routes. "Very well," she said quietly. "You have made your choice. Now you will see ours." The human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind them, the aliens continued their discussions about committees and compromise. They talked about economic sanctions and cultural exchanges. They planned meetings that would happen in months or years. None of them understood that the humans had already made their decision. None of them realized that Earth was already preparing for war. None of them knew that in human space, every man and woman was volunteering for military service. As the Aurora's dawn pulled away from the council station, Jake Morrison stood beside Admiral Grant on the bridge. "Do you think they believed us?" he asked. Grant looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human families were locked in alien prisons. Somewhere out there, human children were crying for parents they might never see again. "It doesn't matter. If they believed us," she said. "What matters is that we keep our promise." The ship turned toward Earth, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the Galactic Council continued their meetings, unaware that they had just witnessed the moment when humanity stopped asking for permission and started taking action. The warning had been given. Soon the galaxy would learn what it meant when humans made a promise they intended to keep. 6 months had passed since Admiral Grant gave the warning to the Galactic Council. The Zephyrian Empire had not listened. Instead of releasing human prisoners, they had captured 3 more human colonies. They seemed to think the human warning was just empty words. President Marcus Webb sat in his office on Earth looking at reports from the outer colonies. Each report was worse than the last. The aliens were not just taking prisoners anymore. They were broadcasting their victories across the galaxy, showing humans in cages like animals. General Patricia Cole walked into the president's office. She was the head of Earth's military forces and had been a soldier for 20 years. Her face was grim as she carried a folder full of papers. "Mr. President," she said, "we have a problem. The Zephyrians now have over 50,000 warships. We have built 3,000 ships since we started traveling between stars. The numbers are not good." President Webb rubbed his tired eyes. He had not slept well in months. Every night he dreamed about human families being torn apart by alien slavers. "What do our people think we should do?" he asked. General Cole sat down across from him. "Most of our generals want to build more ships. They think we need at least 10,000 warships before we can fight the Zephyrians." "How long would that take?" 20 years, maybe 30. President Webb stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of the city. Somewhere out there, families were waiting for news about their loved ones who had been captured by aliens. "We don't have 20 years, he said quietly. "Those people are suffering right now." Dr. Robert Chen entered the room. He was the smartest scientist on Earth and had invented the engines that let human ships travel faster than light. He was carrying a tablet computer and looked excited. "Mr. President," Dr. Chen said, "I think I have an idea. We cannot match their numbers, but we don't have to. We just need to make them understand what happens when you wake up a sleeping giant." The president turned around. "What do you mean?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Other alien species fight wars like games. They have rules. They try not to damage too much property. They surrender when they lose too many ships. But humans are different." "General," Cole leaned forward. "Different how?" "We fight for our families," Dr. Chen explained. "When someone threatens our children, we don't care about rules. We don't care about property. We don't care about our own lives. We only care about protecting the people we love." Over the next few weeks, President Webb called together the best military minds on Earth. They met in secret rooms deep underground. The plan they made was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster was put in charge of changing civilian ships into weapons. She worked day and night with teams of engineers. Cargo ships that carried food became missile launchers. Passenger ships that took people on vacation became troop carriers. Mining ships that dug metals from asteroids were given military shields and laser cannons. "Every ship we have will become a weapon," Amy explained to her team. "We cannot build enough warships in time, so we will make warships out of everything we have." But the real surprise was something no other alien race had tried. Humans had been building artificial minds, computer brains that could think like people. Other species were afraid of artificial intelligence, but humans treated their computer partners like friends. Captain Frank Miller worked with Area 7, an artificial mind that lived inside humanity's newest battleship called the Indomitable. Together, they developed new ways to fight that no alien military leader could predict. "The aliens fight like they are playing chess," Area 7 explained in her electronic voice. "They move their pieces carefully and follow patterns, but humans fight like they are in a bar fight. You use whatever you can grab and you don't follow any rules." Meanwhile, on the captured colony world called New Boston, engineer Kate Williams was organizing a secret resistance movement. She had been captured 6 months ago when the Zephyrians attacked her home. The aliens thought she was just another human slave, but Kate was planning something special. Using tools she built from scraps and knowledge of human technology that the aliens could not understand, Kate sent secret messages to other captured human colonies. Soon she was talking to resistance fighters on dozens of different worlds. The Zephyrians thought they were dealing with separate groups of angry prisoners. They had no idea that Kate was coordinating a network of resistance fighters across their entire empire. "We know their systems better than they think," Kate told her fellow prisoners during a secret meeting. "We built most of the equipment they use on our worlds. We know how to break it." Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working on something that would shock the entire galaxy. She was a psychologist who studied how different species thought and felt. She had an idea that would make every alien in the galaxy pay attention to humanity's war. Dr. Rodriguez began broadcasting images across every communication channel she could reach. The images showed human families that had been torn apart by Zephyrian slave raids, human children crying for parents they would never see again, human parents describing the pain of not knowing if their children were alive or dead. The broadcasts did not ask for help. They did not make threats. They simply showed the galaxy what the Zephyrians had done to human families. "This is not about politics," Dr. Rodriguez explained to President Webb. "This is not about territory or trade routes. This is about family. Every species in the galaxy will understand that." The final part of humanity's preparation involved their most advanced technology. The artificial minds like Area 7 had been working together, sharing information faster than any biological brain could process. They had analyzed every piece of information about Zephyrian military tactics, ship designs, and battle strategies. What they discovered changed everything. "The Zephyrians are predictable," Area 7 reported to the human military leaders. "They have been using the same battle tactics for thousands of years. They rely on fear and overwhelming numbers. They have never fought an enemy that refused to be afraid." Admiral Jake Stevens, who had been promoted after the meeting with the Galactic Council, studied the artificial mind's reports. He was now in command of humanity's largest warship, a massive battleship called the Retribution. "So what do?" he asked Aria 7. "We teach them what fear feels like," the artificial mind replied. As the months passed, the galaxy watched humanity's preparations with confusion. Other species that had fought wars before expected to see humans building massive fleets and training traditional armies. Instead, they saw something they did not understand. Humans were not just preparing their military. Entire families were volunteering for service. Grandparents were learning to operate communication systems. Teenagers were training to repair ships. Children were studying alien languages so they could help with intelligence gathering. The Altarian ambassador sent a message to the Galactic Council. "The humans appear to be preparing their entire species for war. This is unprecedented. Most civilizations use only a small portion of their population for military purposes." The Voidwalker representative responded with concern. "We have observed many species throughout galactic history. We have never seen a civilization mobilize so completely. The humans are not preparing for a war. They are preparing for something much more dangerous," but the Zephyrians were not worried. Ambassador Voss sent reports back to his emperor dismissing human preparations. "They are desperate," he wrote. "They know they cannot win, so they are making grand gestures to impress the galaxy. When we defeat their small fleet, they will surrender and accept their place as our servants." Emperor Zektar the Eternal read the reports from his massive throne ship. He had ruled the Zephyrian Empire for over 2,000 years. He had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved dozens of species. The humans did not concern him. "Let them prepare," he told his generals. "Let them build their little ships and make their speeches. When the time comes, we will crush them like all the others." But deep in human space, something was happening that the Emperor did not understand. Humanity was not just preparing for war. They were preparing to keep a promise. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of the Aurora's Dawn, looking out at the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 3,000 warships, 10,000 converted civilian vessels, and countless support craft stretched across space as far as she could see. But the real power of the human fleet was not in the ships. It was in the people aboard them. Every single person in the fleet had volunteered. Many had family members captured by the Zephyrians. All of them understood what they were fighting for. "Are we ready?" Captain Morrison asked. Grant nodded. "Send the message to all ships. Tell them it's time to keep our promise." The human fleet began to move towards Zephyrian space. Behind them, Earth waited. Ahead of them, a galaxy that had never seen human warfare was about to learn what it meant when humans fought for their family. The human fleet appeared at the edge of Zephyrian space without warning. There were no messages sent ahead of time. There were no declarations of war. There were no demands for surrender. The ships simply emerged from faster-than-light travel and began their attack. Admiral Jake Stevens stood on the bridge of his flagship Retribution. Around him, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Everyone knew what they had to do. Everyone understood why they were there. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Commander Hayes announced. Stevens looked out at the enemy territory ahead of them. Somewhere in that space were human prisoners waiting for rescue. Somewhere out there were families that had been torn apart by alien slavers. "All ships," Stevens said into his communication device. "Weapons free. Remember why we are here." The first target was a world called Drakmor Prime. It was where the Zephyrians trained their military officers. Captain Sandra Kim led a strike force of 50 ships toward the planet. Her orders were simple: destroy the military academy and make sure the entire galaxy watched it happen. The Zephyrian defenders were not ready for what hit them. They expected the humans to send messages first, to demand surrender, to follow the normal rules of galactic warfare. Instead, human ships came out of hyperspace already firing their weapons. Captain Kim's voice could be heard on every communication channel in the system. "This is Captain Sandra Kim of the Earth Federation. The facility below us trains soldiers to fight humans. Today you learn what happens when you train to fight us. The military academy on Drakmor Prime was destroyed in less than an hour. But the humans did not stop there. They broadcast the entire attack live across the galactic communication network. Every alien species in the galaxy watched as human ships systematically destroyed everything connected to Zephyrian military training. The message was clear without being spoken. If you train to hurt humans, humans will find you. On the industrial world of Sector 7, Commander Brandon Lee faced a more difficult problem. The planet built ships for the Zephyrian fleet. Normally, attacking forces would try to capture the factories so they could use them later. The humans had different plans. Commander Lee's combined fleet and ground forces shocked the galaxy with their approach. Instead of trying to capture the manufacturing facilities, they destroyed everything that could be used to build enemy ships. When Zephyrian defenders brought human prisoners from the slave camps to use as shields, the human response horrified. Alien observers across the galaxy, Colonel Maria Santos leading the ground assault, broadcast on all frequencies. We see our people, we cry for them, but we will not be stopped by your cowardice. You want to make this about killing innocent people? Let's see who is better at it. The assault continued even with human prisoners in danger. Alien military analysts watching the battle could not understand what they were seeing. The humans seemed willing to let their own people die to complete their mission. But what the aliens did not know was that human stealth teams had already infiltrated the prisoner camps. While the main assault drew all the attention, small groups of specially trained soldiers moved through the shadows, evacuating every human prisoner they could find. By the time the battle was over, most of the human prisoners had been secretly rescued. The Zephyrians lost their industrial capacity and learned that using human prisoners as shields would not stop human attacks. The real shock came from the resistance movements on occupied worlds. Kate Williams had spent months organizing uprisings across 43 different planets. These were not desperate last stands by hopeless prisoners. They were coordinated strikes that hit Zephyrian infrastructure at exactly the right moments. Power grids failed across entire star systems. Communication networks crashed just as Zephyrian commanders tried to coordinate their defenses. Weapon storage facilities exploded in carefully timed sequences that left enemy forces without ammunition or spare parts. Kate stood in the ruins of what had been her prison on New Boston. Around her, freed human prisoners worked alongside the few Zephyrian guards who had chosen to surrender rather than fight. "How did you coordinate all of this?" asked a news reporter who had arrived with the rescue fleet. Kate smiled as she watched human children hug their parents for the first time in months. "The aliens thought we were just angry prisoners making trouble. They never understood that we were building a network. They never realized that every human they captured made our network stronger. But the most audacious attack of all was led by General Rex Morrison, Admiral Stephen's younger brother. His target was the Zephyrian homeworld itself, the center of their empire and the seat of their government. Rex knew he could not conquer the heavily defended planet with his small fleet. That was not the goal. His mission was to deliver a message that would be impossible to ignore. Human ships punched through the planet's orbital defenses in a desperate assault that cost hundreds of human lives. But they held the gap just long enough to drop a single communication probe into the capital city. The probe activated in the center of the Zephyrian government district. Suddenly, every screen and communication device in the city displayed the same image: President Webb of Earth, speaking directly to the Zephyrian people. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," the president said, "your leaders took our children. They enslaved our people. They ignored our warning. Now you know what it feels like to be helpless in your own home. This ends now, or we show you what total war really means." The probe then displayed images of human families that had been destroyed by Zephyrian raids, children crying for dead parents, parents searching for children sold into slavery, entire communities that had been wiped out by alien attacks. Emperor Zektar, the Eternal, watched the broadcast from his palace. For the first time in his 2,000-year reign, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. His military advisors tried to explain what was happening. "The humans are not following standard warfare protocols," General Vossitar reported. "They do not seem to care about preserving infrastructure or minimizing casualties. They appear willing to sacrifice anything to achieve their objectives." The Emperor's ancient advisor, Seklar Doomspeaker, offered a more disturbing analysis. "My lord, we are not fighting a military campaign. We are fighting a religious crusade. These humans believe their cause is sacred. They are willing to die for it. Worse, they are willing to let others die for it." Across the galaxy, other alien species watched the human assault with growing horror. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions every day. Species that had never agreed on anything before found themselves united in their shock at human tactics. The crystalline Altarians called it barbarism. "Civilized species do not wage war this way," their ambassador declared. "There are rules. There are protocols. The humans are acting like savage animals." The gaseous nebulons were equally disturbed. "We have observed warfare for millions of years," their representative stated. "Never have we seen a species so willing to accept massive losses for strategic objectives. It defies all logical analysis." Even the warlike Corvan clans, who respected strength above all else, expressed amazement at human methods. "They fight as if the universe itself is trying to kill them," a Corvan general reported. "Death in battle seems preferable to them than surrender or retreat." But the Zephyrian Empire was crumbling. In just 3 weeks of human assault, they had lost more territory than in the previous century of conventional warfare. Their military doctrine, based on intimidation and overwhelming force against weaker opponents, proved useless against enemies who refused to be intimidated. Admiral Stevens received reports from all fronts as he coordinated the assault from his flagship. Every human attack had succeeded beyond expectations. Enemy forces were surrendering faster than human commanders could process the prisoners. "They don't know how to fight us," Aria-7 observed from her electronic consciousness within the ship's computer systems. "Their entire military philosophy is based on making enemies afraid. But we are already afraid for our families. They cannot make us more afraid than we already are." The artificial mind paused as she processed thousands of data streams from across the battlefield. "Admiral, I am detecting something unusual in Zephyrian communication patterns. They are not just retreating, they are panicking." Stevens studied the tactical displays showing enemy fleet movements. "What do you mean?" "They have never faced an enemy like humans before," Area 7 explained. "Every other species they have conquered followed predictable patterns. When losses reached a certain point, they negotiated. When infrastructure was threatened, they surrendered. But humans keep fighting no matter what happens." As the human assault continued, the psychological impact began to spread beyond the Zephyrian Empire. Other alien species started to reconsider their own policies toward humanity. Trade agreements that had been refused were suddenly approved. Diplomatic messages that had been ignored were answered immediately. The Voidwalker representative sent a private communication to the Galactic Council. "We have observed this galaxy for eons. We have seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. But we have never seen anything like this. The humans are not just winning a war. They are teaching the galaxy a new definition of determination." The galaxy was in shock. Emergency meetings were happening on every major world. Species that had never spoken to each other before were now calling urgent conferences. The Galactic Council met every day, sometimes twice a day, trying to understand what humanity was doing. The crystalline Altarians sent ambassadors to dozens of worlds. "This is not warfare," they told anyone who would listen. "This is madness. Civilized species do not fight this way." The gaseous nebulons created special committees to study human behavior. Their reports all said the same thing. The humans seem to view death in battle as better than surrender. This defies all logical understanding of survival instincts. Even the warlike Corvan clans, who respected strength above everything else, were confused by human tactics. "They fight like cornered animals," reported General Karvok. "But cornered animals fight to escape. These humans fight as if escape is not important to them." But while the galaxy talked, the Zephyrian Empire continued to fall apart. Emperor Zektar the Eternal sat in his throne room aboard the massive fortress ship Dominion. The ship was bigger than most space stations and had enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. But even here, in the most protected place in his empire, the emperor felt afraid. His generals brought him reports that got worse every day. In 3 weeks of fighting, the humans had destroyed more Zephyrian military bases than had been lost in the previous 100 years. They do not fight like any enemy we have faced before, reported General Vostar. His scaled face showed confusion and fear. We try to frighten them, but fear only makes them fight harder. We threaten their prisoners, but they attack anyway. We offer them chances to surrender, but they ignore us completely. The Emperor's oldest advisor, Seklar Doomspeaker, had served the royal family for 1,500 years. He had seen the Empire conquer dozens of worlds and enslave many different species, but he had never seen anything like the human war. "My lord," the ancient advisor said, "we are not fighting soldiers. We are fighting believers. They think their cause is holy, and they are willing to die for it. Worse than that, they are willing to watch others die for it." Meanwhile, human forces continued their relentless advance. Captain Jennifer Clark led a rescue mission to Kretar Station, a massive space facility where the Zephyrians processed captured slaves before selling them to other worlds. The rescue operation was broadcast live across the galactic communication network. Every alien species in the galaxy watched as human soldiers fought their way through the station, freeing prisoners and documenting what they found. The images were terrible. Human children kept in cages barely big enough for their bodies. Human adults broken by months of torture and conditioning. Human families that had been separated and sold to different buyers across the galaxy. But the galaxy also saw the human response. The soldiers were professional and efficient, but they showed no mercy to anyone who had participated in the slave trade. Guards who surrendered were taken prisoner. Guards who resisted were killed without hesitation. Captain Clark's voice echoed through the station as her teams moved from level to level. "Every human child we find dead, every human adult we find broken, every family we cannot reunite will be remembered, and you will pay for each one." The rescue operation saved over 10,000 human prisoners, but it also served another purpose. The images from Kretar Station were shown to every government in the galaxy. No one could claim they did not know what the Zephyrians had been doing to captured humans. Dr. Lisa Chang, humanity's chief expert on alien biology, made a discovery that changed the entire war. Working in her laboratory on Earth, she analyzed biological samples taken from captured Zephyrian soldiers. What she found explained much about Zephyrian behavior. Their aggression was partly controlled by special chemicals in their bodies called pheromones. These chemicals made them feel dominant when they were around weaker species. It was like a drug that made them feel powerful and superior. This is why they are so aggressive toward other species, Dr. Chang explained to the military commanders. Their own biology makes them feel good when they dominate others. But it also means we can use their biology against them. Working with the Artificial Intelligence Collective, human scientists developed a new weapon. It was not designed to kill Zephyrians, but to disrupt the chemical signals that made them feel confident and aggressive. The weapon was first used during the Battle of Corvin's Gate, an important space junction that connected many star systems. Admiral Stevens faced a Zephyrian fleet that was twice as large as his own human force. Under normal circumstances, the battle would have been hopeless for the humans. But when the new biological weapon was deployed, something incredible happened. For the first time in their species' history, Zephyrian soldiers experienced real fear. The chemical that made them feel brave and superior was suddenly neutralized. They found themselves facing human ships while feeling the same terror that their victims had always felt. The effect was devastating. Ships that should have fought to the death surrendered after only a few minutes of combat. Crews abandoned their vessels rather than face human boarding parties. The supposedly unstoppable Zephyrian war machine collapsed, not because of superior firepower, but because they suddenly understood what it felt like to be afraid. The battle was broadcast across the galaxy. Alien observers watched in amazement as the fearsome Zephyrian fleet fell apart in front of their eyes. "The humans have done something impossible," reported the Altarian military analyst. "They have made the Zephyrians afraid. No one has ever made the Zephyrians afraid before." But the human advance came at a terrible price. The casualty reports streaming back to Earth were heartbreaking. Entire families had volunteered for military service, and entire families had died together fighting for their species. The memorial walls on Earth grew longer every day. Names of fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, grandparents and grandchildren filled electronic displays in every city. These were people who had given everything to keep humanity's promise to rescue their captured family members. President Webb visited the memorial walls every morning before starting his daily work. He read the names of the dead and reminded himself why the war was necessary. Each of these people died so that human families could be together again. He told his advisors, "We cannot let their sacrifice be meaningless." The psychological impact of the war spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had never considered humans to be important suddenly began treating them with respect. Trade agreements that had been rejected for years were suddenly approved. Diplomatic messages that had been ignored were answered immediately. The Voidwalker representative, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy, sent a private message to other ancient species. The humans have taught us something new about warfare. It is not about technology or numbers. It is about what you are willing to lose for what you refuse to lose. On the Zephyrian homeworld, civilians watched the war reports with growing fear. Their mighty empire, which had seemed invincible for thousands of years, was crumbling before a species they had considered to be primitive children. Emperor Zektar received a report that shook him to his core. Human forces had broken through the outer defensive lines and were now only 3 star systems away from the imperial capital. "How many ships do they have left?" the Emperor asked his military commanders. General Vostar checked his reports. "Our intelligence suggests they have lost over 60% of their original fleet." "Then why do they keep fighting?" The general was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Because they still have human prisoners to rescue, my lord. As long as we hold their people, they will continue to fight." The Emperor stood up from his throne and walked to the great window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a species barely 200 years old was destroying an empire that had lasted for millennia. "What do they want?" he asked quietly. His advisor, Secular Doomspeaker, spoke the truth that no one wanted to hear. "They want their families back, my lord, and they are willing to burn the galaxy down to get them." As reports continued to arrive from the front lines, it became clear that the Zephyrian Empire faced a choice. They could continue fighting until both species destroyed each other, or they could accept that they had awakened something in humanity that could not be stopped. The Emperor looked at the casualty reports from both sides. Millions of Zephyrians had died. Millions of humans had died. But the humans kept coming, driven by something the Emperor was only beginning to understand. They were not fighting for territory or resources or political power. They were fighting for something much more dangerous than any of those things. They were fighting for love. The war ended not with a great space battle, but with a simple message. Emperor Zektar the Eternal, ruler of the mighty Zephyrian Empire for over 2,000 years, sent a communication to the human fleet that was now approaching his homeworld. The message was short. "We surrender. What do you want from us?" Admiral Jake Stevens received the message on the bridge of his flagship Retribution. Around him, his officers looked tired but determined. They had been fighting for months, and many of their friends had died in the war. But they had kept their promise. Stevens looked at the message for a long time before responding. When he finally spoke, his words would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. "Our terms are simple," he said. "Give us back our people, all of them, alive. Pay money to the families of those you killed. Tell everyone in the galaxy that humans are not to be enslaved, conquered, or ignored. Do this, and we will show you the same mercy you showed our children." The Emperor's surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. But what shocked alien observers was not the Zephyrian defeat. It was what humanity did after winning. Instead of occupying Zephyrian worlds or demanding tribute payments, the humans did something no galactic power had ever done before. They offered to help rebuild what the war had destroyed. President Marcus. Webb addressed the Galactic Council from the same chamber where Admiral Grant had delivered humanity's warning over a year earlier. The alien representatives listened with new respect as the human leader spoke. "We did not fight this war because we wanted to conquer anyone," President Webb said. "We fought because our family was in danger. Now that our family is safe, we want to help you learn from what happened here. But understand this. Humanity will never again accept the idea that any species is too young, too small, or too weak to deserve basic respect." The reconstruction of the Zephyrian Empire under human guidance became a model that other species studied and copied. Admiral Morrison, promoted again for his service in the war, worked alongside former enemies like General Vossitar to rebuild the worlds damaged in the fighting. It was strange to see former enemies working together. General Vossitar, who had once called humans primitive children, now took orders from human engineers and followed human construction plans. "I do not understand your species," the Zephyrian general told Admiral Morrison one day as they watched human and alien workers building new homes for war refugees. "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. "You could have destroyed us completely," Vossitar explained. "You had the power to take everything we owned. Instead, you help us rebuild." "Why?" Morrison looked at the construction site where human children played alongside young Zephyrians whose parents had chosen to stay on human-protected worlds rather than return to the shattered empire. "Because that's what families do," Morrison said simply. "They protect each other, but they also forgive each other when the fighting is over." The real change came in how other species viewed humanity. Dr. Rodriguez's studies of human behavior became required reading in diplomatic schools across the galaxy. The concept of total commitment entered alien military training as something called the human factor. Alien military academies began teaching courses about human psychology. "Never threaten what a human considers family" became the first rule in every galactic military manual. When humans say they will do something, believe them. The Voidwalkers, ancient observers of galactic civilization, offered their assessment through their newest representative, a young entity called Truthseeker. "In 1 year," Truthseeker announced to the Galactic Council, "the humans have taught us more about warfare, diplomacy, and sacrifice than we learned in the previous 1,000 years. They have shown us that strength is not about technology or numbers. It is about what you are willing to lose for what you refuse to lose." On the former slave world of New Boston, Kate Williams had been elected as the new colonial governor. The planet was now home to both humans and Zephyrians, who had chosen to live under human protection rather than return to their old empire. A news reporter came to interview Kate about humanity's future role in the galaxy. They found her watching children play in the main square of the rebuilt capital city. "Governor Williams," the reporter asked, "what do you think humanity's legacy will be after this war?" Kate watched human and alien children playing together, sharing toys and laughing at the same jokes. In the center of the square stood a memorial with the names of every human who had died in the liberation of New Boston. "We taught the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for," Kate said. "But more importantly, we taught them that some things are worth fighting to protect. The difference is everything." The memorial bore an inscription that had become famous across the galaxy. "They were warned. They chose not to listen. We kept our promise. Remember why." Visitors from dozens of different species came to read those words and understand what they meant. The memorial had become a place where aliens came to learn about human determination and human love. 6 months after the war ended, Admiral Stevens stood on the bridge of the Retribution, which now served as humanity's flagship for their new role as peacekeepers in the galaxy. Through the windows, he could see construction ships building a new type of vessel. These were not warships. They were exploration vessels, medical ships, and research platforms. Humanity had proven they could fight better than any other species in the galaxy. Now they wanted to show what they could do when they chose to build instead of destroy. "Admiral," Area 7 said from her electronic consciousness within the ship's computer, "I have been analyzing galactic communication patterns since the war ended." "What have you found?" Stevens asked. "Something interesting," the artificial mind replied. Species across the galaxy are changing their laws about slavery and prisoner treatment. The Corvin clans have freed all their war prisoners. The Altarians have banned forced labor. Even the distant Spiral Arm Confederacy has adopted what they call human standards for protecting civilians. Stephen smiled. So our message got through. More than that, Aria 7 continued. Several species have asked for human advisors to help them restructure their militaries. They want to learn what they call human-style determination for defending their own people. The changes were happening everywhere. Trade routes that had been controlled by strong species preying on weak ones were now protected by joint patrols that included human ships. Diplomatic disputes that might once have led to wars were now resolved through negotiation, with humans serving as mediators. President Webb received reports about these changes every morning with his breakfast. Each report showed the same pattern. Species across the galaxy were treating each other with more respect and care. It's working, he told his advisors. Not the war, but what came after the war. We're teaching the galaxy that protecting the weak makes everyone stronger. But the most important changes were happening in individual families across human space. Children who had been separated from their parents were reunited. Husbands and wives who had thought each other dead were brought back together. Communities that had been scattered by alien raids were rebuilt. Dr. Elena Rodriguez published a study about the psychological effects of the war on human society. Her conclusions surprised many people. The war made us stronger as a species, she wrote. Not because we learned to fight better, but because we learned that we could depend on each other completely. Every human knew that if they were captured or threatened, the entire species would come to help them. The final scene of humanity's transformation from a young species to a galactic power took place on Earth itself. Construction had begun on a massive space dock in orbit around the planet. The ships being built there would carry human explorers, scientists, and peacekeepers to every corner of the galaxy. Admiral Grant, now retired from active duty, stood in the observation deck of the new facility watching the construction. Beside her stood Captain Morrison, Admiral Stevens, and many of the other officers who had served in the war. "Do you think it was worth it?" Morrison asked quietly. Grant looked out at the stars, thinking about all the humans who had died in the fighting and all the families that had been reunited because of their sacrifice. "Ask me that question in 50 years, she said. When human children are growing up in a galaxy where no one dares to hurt them because everyone knows what happens to people who threaten human families. Below them, Earth turned slowly in space. The blue and green planet looked peaceful and beautiful, but everyone in the galaxy now knew the truth about the people who lived there. Humans were a species that would cross the galaxy, fight impossible odds, and sacrifice everything they had for the people they loved. They had given the galaxy one warning, and when that warning was ignored, they had kept their promise. The galaxy would never forget the lesson humanity had taught them. Never threaten what humans consider family, because humans keep their promises, no matter what the cost, and in the end, that promise had changed everything.